Okay, in this video we're going to show you how to disassemble, clean and hopefully get going again the phase 1 type of a Corgi ElectroRocket car. And just to recap from the previous video, the phase 1 is the one with the smaller motor. These come in the Bizzarini Manta and also the Alfa Romeo Montreal. Before we actually take one to pieces, it may be worth just me showing you this particular car, which I recently won on an eBay auction. As you can see, it's in very good condition, and when you find these like this, I think, as I said before, it's always worth having a go to get the car working before taking it apart. This one is in very good condition. The seller said that the battery had been taken out back in the 70s when it stopped taking a charge. So the screw, which would be here, is actually missing, but we'll just open it up to have a look. As you can see, other than this someone's had a go at bending this contact, the inside's pretty good. I think it just needs a bit of a clean with some wet and dry paper. The windings of the brushes are all intact, so finding one in this condition, it's always worth having a go to see if the motor works. It may take a bit of coaxing, but to help you along with this, it's worth first of all spraying something like this. This is Servicol Aeroclean 50. It's a electronic cleaning solvent. What I've done on previous ones is to squirt some, if you can see very clearly on this camera, in the gap where the windings to the brushes are. So you squirt some down that hole there, and also underneath some down that hole there. Also, before we try it, it's worth also putting some light machine oil into the gap here where the wheels are and the axle, because when these motors have been not working for probably about 40 years, they're going to squeal like hell. So first of all, squirt some of this Servicol Aeroclean 50 or something similar down in between where the brushes are. A little blob of light machine oil. This is actually from my electric razor. And then once you've done that, just one point to think: if you find these and the wheels are seized, then it's probably not worth doing it, because also try to avoid, if the wheels are seized, turning the wheels, because you may just break something inside the motor. It's probably that you haven't, if you've got one of these for the first time, you may not have a power cell to actually test this car with. So before we test it with a power cell, it's going to need cleaning up all the contacts anyway. So if you can find a battery, a D cell like this one, and if you attach some wires to it and try and orientate the battery how it would be with the power cell in the car, so the positive connection will be attached to the motor body, and the negative connection to the battery will be connected to this junction here. I take my finger out of the way and use the pointer stick into here. So this is the negative and this is the positive, and hopefully when we connect this battery up, this motor will come to life. So I've got the black wire here onto the actual motor body, and if we just touch the negative onto this contact here, as you can hear, this motor is still working. So they may not always come to life first time. It's worth just spending some time. I've got another one around here somewhere. It took me about 15 minutes of just keeping the power on and just moving the wheels, because sometimes There's a bit of dirt and grit inside, and I mean ideally you would take the motor apart and clean it, but these motors are just so difficult to take apart and to clean and to put back together again without damaging them, that if you can get it going without taking it apart, it's going to be so much easier for you. Alternatively, if you have got one of these power cells and you've got a car that's already working, like a Sizzler's car, you can always charge this up, clean all these contacts and just and power it up that way. But I've found using this sort of D-cell with some cables arrangement a lot easier. So you get power directly into the motor, so as long as we know that the motor works, everything else is, if there's an issue, it's going to be to do with the cleaning of the contacts to make sure that the electricity is getting through to the motor. So, I mean, ideally you find one in this condition, it works as this one has, it's happy days really. But if you don't, as I say, more likely you're going to find one in this sort of state. It's going to get a bit more difficult, so we're going to have to take it apart, and I think I've showed you this one in the previous video. This is in a very poor condition. The windings to the brushes here are completely corroded away, so this isn't going to run without having to rewind the brushes, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But in respect of cleaning, you see this has got the original power cell in place. It's pretty grotty, inside is pretty grotty. But for the purpose of this video, I will take this apart to show you how we clean up the interior of these contacts. And in parallel to this one, we shall take apart another car. This one is actually one that used to run. For some reason it stopped running, and I think I know why, but I'm going to take it apart anyway, just to see what's going on inside. The one we're going to actually take apart here is this one, which is another car which did run. So you can see this one is pretty clean inside. I said it was running. I think I know what's happened is that it was always a little bit sort of sporadic with its running, and I think maybe one of the brushes in here is broken. I'm just going to take this apart anyway. So we're going to take these two together in parallel. So this one's more of a clean, it's sort of demonstrate how to clean the interior of the chassis. With this one we'll be looking inside the motor a bit more detailed, because this is going to be a bit more complete inside than this one is, if that makes any sense. Okay, so let's just clear myself some space here. The first thing we're going to do is take the front wheels off, which is probably the easiest thing to do. So we just get these out of the way. I'm going to leave the front wheels on this one because I'm not going to dip the chassis into the cleaning fluid, so that's not an issue on this one. The next thing we need to do is to just remove the back tyres. This is going to take the removal of the back wheels, make it a lot easier, because you'll find you'll just end up pulling the tyres off anyway. So those just come off like that. See, this one is just completely perished. It's just in such bad condition. See this one, the rubber is still very soft and the tyres come off very easily. See, a lot easier. Okay, the next part is the most difficult part, or one of the most difficult parts, is getting the back wheels off. On the Sizzlers cars and the Matchbox Scorpion cars, the back wheels are plastic, whereas these have like a, I think it's some kind of aluminium alloy hub. And what you'll find is that they're seized on, and no matter how much you pull, you just cannot get them off. I've tried some in the past heating them up. I've tried putting something like WD-40 on them, but just makes them all slippy and harder to get hold of. I've also tried getting some like pliers to grab hold of them, but this metal is very soft, and you'll find if you just grab hold of them with some pliers to try and pull them, you'll just chew the whole of the wheel. So the method that I've used is to basically prise off the wheels by placing a screwdriver between the chassis body and the wheel, and to gently twist the screwdriver and rotate. And this is where I tell you not to rotate the wheel, but in the end, trying to get these wheels off, you end up moving them anyway. So we just gently work our way with this, and eventually they will come off. So I'm just going to do that for a few minutes, and we'll come back and see where we get to. Right, that was a blinking nightmare, but we've managed to get them off. It's taken me about 20 minutes for these two cars. You probably can't see on the camera, but there's like a little lip here, and you have to get the screwdriver between that lip and the spindle of the motor to prise it off. Oh my goodness. One came off really easily, but the other three were just absolute nightmare. And the trick is just to work your way very easily, just turning the wheel round very slowly so you don't bend the hub. Anyway, now we've got that nightmare bit over with, on to the next nightmare bit, taking the motor apart. But to get it out, as you can see, we've got, I've got my pointing stick again. There's a little solder joint here between this contact and a contact that's in the motor. This one's actually been severed by the corrosion, so that's already been released. But to release this, we just need to heat it up with a soldering iron, and then that will release that connection. I'll do this one. This one's actually been released, I say, by the corrosion. So once that is released, the motor should just push out from the bottom here. We might need just to bend this up a bit, just to give it a bit of freedom to get the thing out. These contacts will take a little bit of abuse, but not too much. There we are. So that's the motor released. So I'll do this one in a second. I just need to get the soldering on that little bit of solder there, just to release it. Now we've got the chassis, and we'll soak this in some cleaning solution.